2 years ago, an English club paid for the medical, looked at the scans, and walked away. Their doctors decided this teenager's body wasn't worth the risk. His back, his knees, too fragile. Deal off. On Saturday, that same teenager walks out to face England in a World Cup quarterfinal. But here's the part nobody tells you. When Antonio Nusa scored the goal that made him famous, the goal Norway had waited 88 years for, he didn't celebrate for the cameras. He pointed to the sky, for a promise he made to someone who never got to see it. In this video, I'll show you how a kid from a quiet town outside Oslo became the player England now has to stop, why everyone talks about Haaland, and why they might be watching the wrong Norwegian, and what really happened in that medical room that an entire continent got scared of. And listen, hit that like button now in advance. If you don't enjoy the video, you can just take it back at the end. Deal? Let's start with the goal. June 30th, 2026, Dallas. Norway versus Ivory Coast, round of 32. A cagey, nervous first half, the kind where nobody wants to make the mistake. 39th minute. The ball comes to Nusa on the left. He's got a defender square in front of him, no obvious space. So he doesn't go outside. He cuts in, onto his right foot, takes one touch to set himself, and curls it. Top right corner. The goalkeeper doesn't move. Now that's a beautiful goal on any day. But watch what it actually meant. Norway had not scored in the knockout stage of a World Cup since 1938. 88 years. And at 21 years and 74 days, Nusa became the youngest player ever to score for Norway at a major tournament, breaking a record that had stood since Euro 2000. One swing of his right foot, and he'd rewritten almost a century of Norwegian football history. And then he pointed to the sky. Because that goal wasn't for the highlight reel. It was for his grandmother, and a promise he'd made her long before the world knew his name. So who is he? To understand this kid, you have to go to Langhus, a quiet suburb about 20 minutes south of Oslo. His mother, Kristen, is Norwegian. His father, Joe, is Nigerian, from the historic Benin Kingdom, where the family name Nusa is said to mean, "What God says will come to pass." Remember that. Joe was a footballer too, but a serious knee injury ended his career early, so he poured everything he knew into his son. Nusa started at the local club, Langhus, then moved to the Stabæk Academy as a boy, and he did not wait around. He made his senior debut at 16 and scored on it. 16 years old, first team, and he finds the net. By then, the biggest clubs in Europe already knew the name. In 2021, still just 16, he left Norway for Belgium, Club Brugge. And a year later, in September 2022, came the moment that told everyone this was real. Champions League, away to Porto. Nusa comes off the bench and scores in a 4-0 win. At 17, one of the youngest goal scorers in the history of the competition. 3 seasons at Bruges, 2 Belgian league titles, and 86 appearances before he'd turned 20. Everything was going exactly to plan. And that's usually right where the story turns. January 2024, Nusa is 18. Brentford, in the Premier League, agree a deal, around 37 million euros. He'd picked them ahead of other English clubs sniffing around. Everything was set. And then he went for the medical. The scans flagged issues with his knees and his back. Belgian reports mentioned floating cartilage, and Brentford, at the very last moment, pulled out. Walked away. Think about what that does to an 18-year-old. In his own words, he was left to come to terms with an elite football club telling him, essentially, that his body was broken. He said it himself later. "I was afraid there was something wrong with my body. Those were difficult times." And here's the cruel part. Once one club's medical says no, alarm bells ring across the whole continent. Overnight, one of Europe's most exciting young wingers had a giant red flag stapled to his file. But one club kept watching. RB Leipzig, a club that had just sold Dani Olmo to Barcelona and needed a new number 7. Leipzig ran their own checks. The Norwegian Federation confirmed there was no real problem. And in the summer of 2024, Leipzig signed him for around 21 million, far less than Brentford had been ready to pay. So the fragile kid nobody would insure. He debuted for Leipzig by scoring the winner on his first Bundesliga matchday. Then, on day 2, he set up the goal that ended Bayer Leverkusen's unbeaten run stretching back over a year. The body that was too broken for the Premier League was, it turned out, just fine. Now, I have to be honest with you, because this channel doesn't do fairy tales without the fine print. Nusa is not a finished product. At Leipzig, his numbers are still modest, a handful of goals a season, not yet the output of a superstar. The knee has flared up again since. Scouts who love him still use words like raw and inconsistent. He is potential, not yet a guarantee. But then he plays for Norway, and something changes. Because for Norway, Nusa isn't asked to be the star. That job belongs to Erling Haaland, 7 goals at this World Cup, co-leading the race for the Golden Boot. And that is exactly what makes Nusa so dangerous. Everyone plans for Haaland. Everyone builds their wall around the big number 9. And while they're doing it, the 21-year-old on the left is cutting inside onto that right foot. Look at Norway's run. Second in their group behind France, including a brutal 4-1 loss to the French that showed this team can still be hurt. But then the knockouts. Ivory Coast, the Nusa screamer, Haaland the late winner, 2-1. And then the round of 16. Brazil, 5-time world champions. Norway beat them 2-1. Haaland scored twice, and Norway did what almost nobody expected. They knocked out Brazil and reached the first World Cup quarterfinal in their history. And that match had a private meaning for Nusa. Growing up, his idol was Neymar. He'd said openly, before the tournament, that he dreamed of facing Brazil and beating them. He got his wish, though there's a bittersweet edge to it. Nusa was taken off at halftime, and Neymar came on later. When he was subbed, he didn't sulk. He said if it wasn't his day, someone else could have theirs, as long as the team won. That's the other thing about him. For a kid once told his body wasn't good enough, there's remarkably little ego. This year, he even published a children's book about chasing a dream to the professional game. The kid who was almost written off, now telling other kids not to give up. Which brings us to Saturday. Norway versus England, quarterfinal of the World Cup, and the subplot writes itself. Brentford, an English club, decided Antonio Nusa's body wasn't worth the gamble. Now he walks out against England, 90 minutes from a World Cup semi-final, with Newcastle, Liverpool, and Bayern all reportedly circling, and a price tag that's climbed to around £43 million. The body they called broken might just be the thing that breaks English hearts. But there's a catch, and this is the real intrigue going into the match. Nusa's place isn't guaranteed. His coach, Ståle Solbakken, has a genuine decision to make on the wings, with players like Oscar Bob pushing hard for a start after impressing against Brazil. So the question isn't just whether Nusa can hurt England, it's whether he'll even start. So I'll leave it with you. If you're Solbakken, do you trust the kid with the magic right foot from the start? Or do you keep him as the weapon you bring off the bench when England are tired? And the bigger one, 2 years after an English club said no, is this the day Antonio Nusa makes England regret it? Drop your prediction for the quarterfinal below. And if you want the full story of how Norway shocked Brazil, that one's waiting for you right now on the channel.